So I may have just made a terrible mistake. You see, my wife has just gone to visit her sister and she's going to be staying overnight and she'll be gone until tomorrow. And for some reason I thought that this would be the perfect time to start making a gaming board for Elder Scrolls Call to Arms. So I have 24 hours to get this board fully completed before she gets back, and I've decided I'm going to take you along with me as I build it, because if I'm going to get in trouble for this, you better be damned you're getting in trouble for this too. So this is going to be a 2 foot by 2 foot board, which I'll primarily be using for Elder Scrolls Call to Arms, but really the hope is that this could be used with any fantasy style miniatures game. I'm going to be building this for a specific scenario for the game, and as such I have to stick to some measurements that are scenario specific for the battle report I'm going to be recording with it. There are going to be 2 lines of walls running down the center of the board that are about 6 inches from the edge and equally about 6 inches apart. So the first thing I'm doing is marking out on the board where everything will go so that we can then begin shaping everything around that. But because we don't want this table to just be one flat surface area, I'm going to be using some XPF foam offcuts to line one side of the board and a corner of the board as well to give some slight elevation and just make it a little bit more interesting. These offcuts have some pretty sharp edges though, so rather than get my hot wire cutter out to soften them, I'm just going to use a Stanley knife and start carving away in a very unsafe fashion. Don't cut things like this, I just held it this way for the shot. We don't need to have a completely smooth line on the foam when we're doing this. We just need to round off the top edge because we'll be filling in the rest with sculpt mold later, which I'll show you. So now that we've got these starting elements in place, I'm going to start adding in some details like roads. For this table, I really want it to be like a broken and uncared for road passing through ruins of a place that's been lost to time. That again is so non-descriptive that it could not only work for Elder Scrolls, but equally for a historical game too. For the roads, I need these to adhere and harden to the MDF really quickly. So I took some milliput, which is just epoxy putty, got some oddly sized balls of it and used a cobblestone textured roller to roll it out onto the table. The roller has to be pretty wet in order for the milliput not to gunk up into it, but for me this makes really nice looking roads that are durable, strong and cure really quickly. Alright, so it's 9:30 in the evening. I think we've made relatively solid progress. Let me show you the board and where we're at within like the first hour or so of starting this project. So far it's not actually looking too bad. We've got the milliput roads here, which are, I kind of wanted them to go in like a T section, just to make it look a little bit more visually interesting. And then we'll use the ruined walls here to kind of like split up the board and separate it and add some character. We've got some of the modeling compound, or sculpt the mold really, along the front join of both of the foam corners, and that will slowly begin to dry and cure, as will the milliput. But in essence, not too shabby for like an hour and a half, couple of hours work so far. So I'm going to stick the kettle on, wait for this to cure. We'll see if it cures dry or to a usable dryness before bedtime, but let's stick the kettle on, see how we go. We'll come back to this in like an hour's time and see where we're at from there. And then the unspeakable happened. Okay, so I kind of lost track of time and was on my phone for like what I thought was 1 cup of tea's worth of time, and then it turns out it's like 11:30. No, sorry, it's 5 minutes to midnight. So lost a little bit of time. Dryness on the board, the sculpt mold, the modeling compound is still a little bit wet. The milliput is not entirely cured, so yeah, I'm not sure exactly what we could do. The only thing I know we could do is actually just, it's currently raining outside, ignore the dishes, it's currently raining outside, so the only other thing we could do is actually take our walls, prime them and actually just dry brush them before we go to bed, which would mean that in the morning everything's kind of prepped and ready to flock, base, all that kind of stuff. The danger in all this is that that's a lot of stuff to leave until the morning. I don't know when my wife's going to get back tomorrow. She hasn't told me yet. So it could be at any time. I'm betting that she's going to have a lie-in. So I think it's time we maybe brought in a plan B. And so plan B, or more aptly plan forgiveness, was born. Knowing that there is quite a few things still to do to the board, and knowing that there's every possibility that with drying times the board may not be done by the time my wife gets home, I decided to do some chores in hopes that the house being nice and clean would kind of counteract any annoyance at the fact I'd taken over our kitchen with yet another hobby project. So the dishwasher was filled, the house was vacuumed and mopped, and with my blood pumping with productivity and my lungs filled with bleach fumes, I decided that even with it raining outside, I'd get the walls primed and airbrushed. Now these are 3D printed models I got off Amazon. I'll leave a link to them down in the video description. They cost about £12, I believe, at the time, and if you choose to pick them up for yourself, I'll equally get a little commission, so thank you if you choose to do that. So it is 1:42 AM and I've just gotten all of the little archways primed and very simply airbrushed. I'll probably add some little moss details and stuff to them in the morning, but for now, I think I'm going to call them done and hit the hay. Everything's still drying and solidifying downstairs, so hopefully by the morning it'll be rock solid. We can get some basing materials on there, some flock on there, and I think we're pretty close, so I will see you in the morning. With a new day dawning and the ever-looming return of my wife, I started off the day by making a healthy breakfast of Mod Podge and poster paint. Now with the table now completely cured and dry, the Mod Podge would help protect the foam and act as added adhesive, and the brown paint would just let me know where the Mod Podge had been applied since it dries clear. One thing that can be a real annoyance with game tables is storage, which is something I did put a bit of thought into on this board. I want to be able to remove the walls so that the MDF base is easier to store and so that I can use the walls elsewhere. So I stuck some double-sided sticky tape that was cut to the outline of the walls' bases and stuck them onto their locations on the table. Now this will mean that I can flock the table, and once everything is dried, remove the walls, leaving the outline of where they should go. Time was running out. Liz had just texted me to say that she was on her way home, so to add some texture to the board, I got my texture paint from Vallejo and smeared some on the board, primarily around the roads, and got some paint on the roads too so that they looked more like cobblestone. And in my haste to get the board done, that was the last clip I filmed. So was it completed in time? Well, let's take a look. I was adding the final pieces of static grass to the board when Liz arrived home. Thankfully, she thought the board looked great, and to be honest, I was also really surprised that I finished this in less than 24 hours. Building a game board can be a daunting process, but if you keep things really simple and go for something like a 2x2 foot table, which is way more manageable in size, it's totally possible to do something like this at home, and I'd encourage you to give it a try. I have more build projects planned for the future, but if you've any suggestions, let me know down in the comments. I may just think it's mad enough to try. And in the meantime, if you want to see the battle report that this table was used for, you can click somewhere on the screen. I will present a thing that you can click to go see that. It's probably over here, maybe. Yeah, probably over there.